Welcome to Voices of CFMA, sponsored by Profix, Construction Financial Management Association's podcast featuring conversations with industry leaders. I'm your host, Kate Platt, CFMA's marketing manager. This month, I'm joined by Hope Voigt. Hope is a CPA from Tweet Garrett Mechanical in De Pere, Wisconsin. She is part of our inaugural 40 under 40 class, a certified construction industry financial professional, and on the board of the Northeastern Wisconsin chapter. Thanks for joining me, Hope.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
So let's jump into this. How did you get involved in construction finance and CFMA?
The way that I got involved was actually when I was in public accounting. One of my clients was Tweet Garrett. I actually did mostly manufacturers from an audit and financial perspective, but I had a couple of contract clients, and Tweet Garrett was one of them. And I was looking to get into a part-time role as I was looking to start a family, and Tweet Garrett had an opening. So I actually left public accounting to join Tweet Garrett. When I got to Tweet Garrett, I quickly realized how many hats a CFM wears, and that I was illy prepared or woefully unprepared, I guess would be a better way to say that, to take on all of those challenges. And when I was talking with our CFO said, you know, a really great way to get education, to develop a network, to get access to resources, other contractors in the area, is to join our local CFMA chapter. So I did that, and it was a really great experience. It's been a great place to not only get education and develop that network, but I've created a lot of great friendships along the way. And it helps you to really be, have more knowledge than you can possibly hold in your own brain when you can really share that with others, right? I'm constantly at events where I'm learning things from others that I couldn't actually accomplish myself if I just, sat behind a computer and researched all day, right? Like there's just this really awesome concept of sharing of information and people just being genuinely interested in you and, you being successful. So it's been a really positive experience to have those friendships and those connections through CFMA. One of our local events, and one of the other CFOs was like, hey, because a lot of us use the same accounting software. And he's like, hey, are you thinking about switching to Trimble One from Vista? Because, what I'm hearing from everybody is that everything's going to Trimble One. And I'm like, what? Which set off a little minor panic. I'm like, go back to my CFO and controller, and I'm like, you guys know what's going on here? And they're like, we haven't heard this. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to start paying attention, because if this is coming in a couple of years, we have to know we have to switch, software. So it was awesome, because you get bombarded by information and you don't always process it really well. So, having other people that you can network with is fantastic, because, you can process more information as a whole than you can as an individual.
Profix software centralizes all your financial data, including ERP, CRM, HR, estimating, and project management for a complete view of company performance. Contact Profix to learn how we can help better manage your project's cash forecasting, WIP reporting, margin fade, and equipment utilization.
So March is Women's History Month, and the week this episode is released is actually National Women in Construction Week. So I was hoping that you could speak a little bit about what it's like to be a woman in the construction industry.
Yeah, so being a woman in the construction industry is definitely a minority position. Many times I am the only female in the room, and that can be initially a little bit uncomfortable and sometimes defeating. A lot of times people are confused by my role, and sometimes I feel like I'm under the microscope a little bit. If there's safety procedures that need to be followed, I need to make sure I am following them, because I get a little attention on the job sites. But all of that being said, really, I've found that once you get to know people and once people kind of adjust to you being unique and different, they actually are really helpful. And, they want to see diversity. A lot of people want to see diversity in the industry. And I found more friends than foes that way, right? Once we get past the initial, hey, I'm the only person in the room, very quickly, everyone's pretty engaged about having somebody with a diverse perspective in the room. And I just think, it allows me now to become an advocate for more women in the industry. And I've been to lots of trade events because we're always trying to recruit women into the trades. And one of the things we've talked about is if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I'm taking my role as a leader, a woman leader in the construction industry, to be the opportunity to be it, so that other women, as they join this industry, can see it.
That's a really great way to look at it, because truly you can't set your sights on being someone if you can't see that happening already. So that's amazing that, you're paving the way for not only women, but let's face it, little girls.
That's funny you say that, because honestly, we found that that's a lot of times where we spend our effort in recruiting in the trades is in like middle school, right? Because that's when the impression of work really starts to set in for our youngsters. And so, it's always great to have women engaging with girls in that kind of middle school age, so they can see it, right?
So this podcast is all about giving and getting advice. And we want to know, what is the best piece of advice you've received in your career?
I'd say the best piece of advice I have received is to just be yourself. I think, what we just talked about before with sometimes being a little bit uncomfortable or being the only woman in the room, it's very easy to wear a mask, right? From the perspective of not being your authentic self. And I've really taken to heart that advice that I've gotten, which is be yourself. You are different, embrace it. And people will be drawn to that. And, trying to fit in doesn't always work, because then people don't really know who you are, and it's harder to follow you or connect with you. And I think, that's been a really helpful piece of advice, especially being in a different, kind of in a different industry for the norms. So, I think you don't need to be one of the boys necessarily, right? And I can be myself, and others will be drawn to that.
That's great advice. And what piece of advice do you have for women who are just starting out in this industry?
My advice for those who are just starting out in this industry is to really be open to learning. Everyone around you has something to teach you, if you can take the time to really listen. And I also think especially for women starting out in the industry, connecting with the people who are open to that diversity and bringing diverse perspectives into the industry. A lot of times they will help propel your career. You got to get out there and kind of be vulnerable and trust them. But once you put yourself out there, that you'll find a lot of people who want to help you progress.
Well, I think that's all great advice to share with members. And I think that's not only applicable for women in the industry, but anyone in the industry. Hope, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Voices of CFMA. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you join us next month when we release our episode with Tom Borgia, the incoming chairman for the 2022-23 CFMA year. Until next month.